Greetings, listening audience. This is Black Star Lion 9 time, and we have a great show lined up tonight, a great topic. We're going to do a little short intro. I'm going to let Clyde greet you all, who's coming out of Chi-Town. He's my co-host, and we're going to get right into it. So, Brother Clyde.
Greetings, Black Star Lion 9 time show listeners. Welcome once again to the show. I'm Brother Clyde Banks. I'm to you out of Chicago. Looking forward to our guests this evening, brothers, that I have had the pleasure and honor of knowing and working alongside, at least during this year, as they roll out what we'll be talking about this evening. So I want to throw it back to Baba Senghor, if you want to do the introductions.
Yes, this is a very important call, you all, and we want everyone to listen very clearly, but to overstand no matter what formation, organization, movement, ideology, philosophy you have, we race first and we focus on Africans and this is a serious calling because Mother Africa has been reaching out to us, and it's our responsibility. The Pan-African Federalist Movement International Provincial Initiating Committee Deputy Coordinator, Brother Joomaay, is going to open up, and we've had Brother Nwalimu Amsata, also known as Edward Brown, with us. You all are familiar with him, but we're going to deal with first my good brother, who I've had the opportunity on several occasions to be in the presence of. His spirit is powerful. He seems to be not only a true Pan-Africanist, but a 21st century visionary who knows what we collectively must do. Without any further ado, Brother Joomaay.
Greetings, Brother Senghor and Brother Clyde and Brother Delani. First of all, I want to thank your listeners and for tuning in to discuss and learn and teach us about what Africans must do to empower themselves and to get back to where we were in during ancient Egypt, meaning on the top of the world. And I want to thank you, Brother Senghor, Brother Clyde, and Brother Delani, for this wonderful idea of having a radio. Because communication. If you want to win, you have to communicate. You can't win without communicating, particularly nowadays where it's important to get the message out, to get the masses to adhere to what you're doing for you to be able to do anything. So congratulations to you for this fantastic idea. And my name is Joomaay. I was born in Senegal, Senegal, the colony, the French colony, former French colony. I don't even know if I could say former French colony, because it's still a French New York colony in Senegal, and I have been involved in political activism for a long time, and that actually led me to go into Burkina Faso to work with Thomas Sankara. This was in 1986 and 87, and the idea of the Pan-African Federalist Movement, actually, first idea was to call for a conference, a congress, where all people who are interested in African unity, whether individuals or organizations, could come together and discuss on how to get this unification to be done. And the first idea when we drew the call, it was called the Call for the African Federalist Congress, not Pan-African Federalist Congress. And I had the chance to meet the luminary Peter Bailey, who was very close to Malcolm X. He will explain to you later on in this communication. And we have had a very, very, very long day conversation, discussion. I came to D.C. to discuss with him the call, and then his wisdom automatically saw that this should not be the call for the African Federalists. It should be the call for the Pan-African Federalist Congress. And therefore, that's where the Pan was added to the Pan was added to the African to make it the Pan-African Federalist Congress, and the movement that is being built around this call is called the Pan-African Federalist Movement. The fundamental is that we are a Garveyite movement in the sense that unity of African people is the fundamental goal of this movement, and the only goal actually of this movement. And as Brother Nwalimu Amsata, who is on the other guest on this line on this program, will say, and our aim is really narrow, but the impact is going to be wide, because with unity, political unity, and regaining of our full sovereignty as African people, we will be able to impact just about the life of every single African who lives on this earth. Because we will be able to have, like Marcus Garvey was used to say, an empire on which the sun never sleeps, an empire that could protect us and defend us wherever we might find ourselves in the world, like Malcolm X used to say. And this is the essence of the Pan-African Federalist movement. It's a grassroots coalition that is being built for the unification of the African states and the African people. I understand that in the U.S., in many countries like Europe, Africans are minorities there. They don't hold the power of a state, but still, we believe, with Pan-African Federalist movement, believe that the unification of African people, the people who are even minority in the land where they live, will be able to have their representative at this federal...
Excuse me, Joomaay, excuse us. Brother Bailey, that's you? Brother Bailey?
I'm still here. This is not...
Okay, no, okay, that was some other noise. Okay, all right, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brother Joomaay.
Radio, Edwina.
All right, you can mute your phone if you need to, bro. Go ahead, Brother Joomaay. Excuse me.
Yeah, so it's the unification is, yes, for the states, but at the meantime, it's also the unification of all African people, even those who are minorities in their state, where they don't control the state, shall be represented as an entity into the federal organigram of this entity that we want to put together. And we have a document that is called Building Our Campaign Machine that specifies and clarifies all that. So this is a movement for all Africans, to participate in the unification of African people. It is not going to be left to the leadership of the continent, which has failed to unite Africa, which has gone against one of the strongest disciples of Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, and has created the Organized African Unity. This is a movement for the unification of the state, following on the footsteps of Nkrumah and Sankara and many of them.
Yes, let me just interject because you mentioned some gigantic ancestors, Garvey and Nkrumah. Let's mention Steve Biko, Lumumba, Sobukwe, Bela, Gaddafi, Malcolm X, Makeba, Marley, Sankara, Diop, Anna Julia Cooper, Julius Nyerere, W.E.B. Du Bois. It's so many brothers and sisters that we need to be pulling from and emulating that all were either seasoned Pan-Africanists or leaders on the African continent. So I really can appreciate the flow of the ancestral energy with this calling. But go ahead back, Brother Joomaay. I just wanted to throw that in so that our brothers and sisters are very clear that we're not talking about a singular ancestor. I'm a true Garveyite race first, but Garvey himself, as well as all of those ancestors in the whirlwind who carried on some of the works, words, and deeds of Garvey, are critical. In order for us to be unified, we must be unified in focusing on our ancestors who were race first, particularly Sankara and, some of the younger ones, like Malcolm X and Sankara and Lumumba, who sacrificed, and Steve Biko sacrificed their lives to put us on track. But go ahead back, brother. I just
Absolutely. And Barthélemy Buganda also, because many people don't realize that the Central African Republic, even though today it's one state, the idea was not for it to be one state. It was supposed to be a union of all the states in Central Africa, all of them, and that's how this brother got. Certainly, he died in an airplane accident or a helicopter. I don't even which one, but many people suspect that it's the French who had something to do with his death. But to come back to the issue is that the real idea behind the Pan-African Federalist movement is that we Africans, in order to change our situation today, we need to bring a structural change, like a root change into our situation. Let me just give back a little bit into history. The anti-slavery movement was a structural change. The independence movement was a structural change in the relationship between African people themselves and power to control their destiny. The civil rights movement was a structural change. The Pan-African Federalist movement, the anti-apartheid movement was a structural change movement. And these movements, Africans can identify with them because they could see that it is the root, it's change at the root. The Pan-African Federalist movement is also a structural change movement because it is addressing the issue of the relationship between African people themselves and power. The power to control to regain their sovereignty in order to repair their dignity. This is what makes the difference between the Pan-African Federalist movement and let's say, the reparation movement, for example, or Black Lives Matter, or others. But you could consider Black Lives Matter as the modern day civil rights movement. It indeed, if you look at it that way, it is a structural change movement because it is completing what the civil rights movement had started, for example. So this is why we believe that this movement, regardless of the organizations that you are working with, to bring, let's say, a symptomatic change, let's say to bring one particular change in the conditions of Africans, the fundamental change will not happen unless we are united. As Garvey himself had realized it, because at the convention that was in New York, he clearly stated that if you are for unity of the African state, you can indeed be a member of the NIA. And this is, they saw the foundational need of a structural change. And this is why we're calling all organizations, regardless of what they are focused on, that they could come and join this coalition of organizations and individuals to bring about the structural change that African people need in order to finally control their sovereignty.
I see. And Wally Moo, you want to chime in here, Wally Moo?
Yeah, sure.
Brother Jim, that's perfect. I really appreciate you laying it out so plain and simple, like Malcolm X said, keeping it plain. Brother Wally Moo?
Yes, Mulimu, I'm Sila, a.k.a. Ed Brown. I'm the coordinator for the Regional Initiating Committee for North America. Brother Joomaay, who's the deputy coordinator for the International Provisional Initiating Committee, has laid out the overview very well. I'm looking forward also to this being in the esteemed company of Peter Bailey, who worked with Malcolm X in forming the Organization of African American Unity, which was modeled after the Organization of African Unity when he attended the second summit and said African problems are our problems and our problems are African problems. So I'm looking forward to being in his company. And just a little background, that he was very influential in my early life as a Pan-Africanist, because as Director of Political Affairs of the Congress of Racial Equality, following Malcolm's example, I took the lead in establishing CORE as a consultative NGO with the United Nations, the Economic and Social Council, which was the only civil rights organization to achieve that status. And then later on, that was 1971, and then in 1973, again following Malcolm's model, CORE attended the 10th Annual Summit of the Organization of African Unity, and then in 1975, the 12th Annual Summit, which I had the honor of also going to. So Malcolm has played a major role, and Peter Bailey has been right beside that role, and I've always been aware of him in this role. So I was looking forward to actually hearing his voice and actually seeing him because he's an esteemed and very.
Well, I can assure you.
I just came on.
Oh, great! There he is.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm late.
Oh no, you know, brother Elder.
No, you don't have to apologize.
My granddaughter called me.
Brother
and, that's why I'm late.
You on time, brother. We're gonna be coming to you right after we finish with Brother Wally Mo. Go ahead, Wally Mo.
All right. So anyway, good to hear your voice, Brother Bailey, Elder Bailey.
I'm glad to be here, brother. I'm glad to be here, brother.
You don't sound like a person who's. You don't sound like an old man at all. You sound like a young guy in your 20s.
I'll be 80 in February.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, anyway, but
brother, I'm trying to keep track with my brother, man. Trust me, we both are kicking at different things.
All right. Anyway, thank you.
I'm trying to keep track with him.
Okay. Well, thank you for the role you played with Malcolm and for the example you've set with and again, as I said, those earlier efforts that I made with as Director of Political Affairs at Congress for Racial Equality I had Malcolm's example clearly in my head in terms of what we were trying to do, and you know, so your role in that was of no short is very high order. Okay, as the coordinator for the North America for the Regional Initiating Committee here, our goal is one to build as many local initiating committees throughout America. We've identified in our mobilization plan 67 areas or cities that have a significant large African population. So our vision is that we will eventually have local initiating committees in all of those areas. The Regional Initiating Committee is part of the Universal Pan-African Federalist Movement, and the mission of, as Brother Joomaay was saying, is to bring the global Pan-African nation into political existence as a universal African federation that we intend to be calling the United African States in much less than a generation. Some people may be familiar that I've written a book called The New Pan-Africanism 2020, in which I identified 2020 as a deadline because that marks the 100th anniversary of the Great Marcus Garvey Convention with 25,000 people for the entire month of August from 40 different countries that established the red, black, and green colors and elected the first provisional president of Africa, the Excellency Marcus Garvey. So I figured the best honor that we could give to him and Brother Malcolm would be on that 100th anniversary to actually bring the United African States into political existence. And there was a natural alliance with the Pan-African Federalist Movement when I talked with Brother Joomaay for me to get involved in that, and I was tapped in 2015 as to become the coordinator. And we've been meeting since 2015. We meet twice a month via Skype, and we are one of we are one of there's regional initiating committees in North America, which is the one that I'm the coordinator of, but there's also committees in the Caribbean, West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, Europe, and we just begin to start meeting with the International Provisional Initiating Committee once a month. In that meeting, Deputy Coordinator Joomaay coordinates. So I've gotten to talk to some of my counterparts across the country, across the world, the globe. Just some that in terms of the integration of Brother Joomaay made reference to like minority states where we don't where we are minorities within the state, or as Martin Delany back in 1852 would say, where we are a nation within a nation. Black people in the United States, about 46 million of us. If we were taken as a nation state, we would be the 7th largest African nation on earth, right in between Kenya and Tanzania. We are probably the richest in terms of the amount of money that flows through our hands. We need to find ways to recirculate it in our community so we can enrich ourselves, because right now we essentially conduits, but we are the richest nation on earth. So my concern would be that we have rights in the Constitution of the United African States that would give us the the capacity to participate in that universal government on an equal basis with other African states. And so that's one of the things that we would be pushing for and be concerned about here in North America. Let me see. We're trying to strengthen the regional initiating committee. There's two different types of members on the committee. One, I mentioned before that is coordinator of the regional initiating committee for North America. We automatically participate with the other regional coordinators, and eventually we will be part of the governance structure for the international movement. That's the envisionment. Taking a lead from that, we're saying that anybody with the super LICs, local initiating committees, in the areas such as Chicago, Washington, Houston, that have well over 1 million African people underneath them, the coordinators of those areas should automatically become a member of the regional initiating committee. And as well as people at large who bring resources in helping us to establish the global vision and build and initiate. We just recently asked Brother Senghor to join us on the regional initiating committee, and he very graciously has agreed to lend his skills and abilities as a previous President General of a global organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the ACLL. So that's in essence where we're going. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, just in terms of the timetable, just looking at the Garvey movement and looking at us. If you look at Garvey said, "What other men have done, we can do," and I'm using Garvey's own words in terms of what was done 100 years ago. We can do. Just a brief summary of the Garvey movement in some very very brief. He founded it in 1914 in Jamaica. In 1916, he leaves from Jamaica to come to New York City. Sometime, I think, in the spring of 1916, A. Philip Randolph lends him his soapbox on 135th Street in Lenox Avenue, which was the equivalent of 125th Street when I was growing up, but that was the Harlem Square. By 1917, he has, which is 100 years ago, this is 2017, 13 members joins with the New York branch of the UNIA. 13 members. We have more than 13 members now in the Pan-African Federalist movement, not only in the United States but globally. But by the Black Star Line, Negro World starts in 1918, the Black Star Line in 1919, and then in 1920 we have that first international convention of Negro peoples of the world at Madison Square Garden, again, which met for the entire month of August. We have conventions for a couple of days. This month, from the entire month of August, established the red, black, and green as the colors, and elected Marcus Garvey as the first provisional president. He ran against Dr. Bussier from Nigeria, according to his son, Julius Garvey. So that's the marker, and that's where we're going in terms of a deadline.
Okay, so brother Waterman, before we go to my good brother Peter Bailey, I want to go back to Brother Joomaay, because he had some very, very kind words to say about Brother Bailey, and I just want him to, if he wanted to add anything in, and then we'll go to my brother and listen to what Brother Bailey, because Brother Bailey missed a little bit of Joomaay's presentation, and then we'll go to Clyde after that. So, Brother Joomaay, you have anything you want to add? Because I love how Walimu added to what you shared, because we want to make sure everybody listening to this show live and everybody that gets the MP3 files is absolutely clear. And we're going to give out the website and way people can contact later on in the show. But Brother Joomaay?
Absolutely. Yes, Brother Peter Bailey is certainly one of a kind to me. Since I met him, he has been a great, great inspiration. And I have to say he is the first Pan-Africanist here in the U.S. that I have met, and who clearly understood that federalism is where African people must go. And so that when we drafted the call, the first person we wanted to meet with and sit and have before the call become public was him. So I went to D.C. and spent the whole day with him at his apartment that day with Brother Cliff, who is also another very involved brother, and another brother, I don't remember exactly his name. So like I said in the beginning, the title of the call was Call for the First African Federalist Congress. And Brother Peter's astuteness is what led us to realizing instead of African Federalist Movement, we should call this movement the Pan-African Federalist Congress and movement, therefore. So Brother Peter is certainly a founding member of this movement, a founding brain of this movement, and he is, by the way, the coordinator also of the Super LIC in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. Brother Senghor, you know that the first meeting we had there to establish this committee, we were at the library and Brother Peter was there. So just the little thing I wanted to add is that, yes, Africans who are minority in their countries, let's say, especially the USA, for example, just give an example, is they must have senators. They will be considered as a state within a state because they will have not only their senators who will push for that, but also their representative at the Congress, so that decisions that are being made that affect African people, they will be full participants. And on top of that, the federal government will indeed open Africa to Africans who have been taken away from the continent again, who have been stolen. I don't use the word slave, who have been stolen, so that they could, if they want to, establish a home on the continent, but still keep their home here, because their home here have been earned by blood, tears, sweat, dehumanization, and there is no reason for them to lose it. But they earned the home here, but also they have never given up their home at home in Africa, which is their home. So the Federalist movement is indeed very keen into making sure that happens. In terms of the regions, the movement has 12 regions. Our goal is to have 12 regions. But out of those 12, we have 9 that are already established. And in terms of the number of membership, we have 47 national committees already that are established, and plus the local initiating committees. I didn't count the local initiating committees in the USA. So yes, we do have, actually, if you're talking about 13 members, we're talking about 13,000 members that we have up to.
Right.
Real point.
Real practical Pan-Africanism. Now, that's a perfect segue to my brother. That's a perfect segue, brother, and that's just why I came back to you, Brother Joomaay, because the spirit of the oneness that I feel coming from the call, you, my brother Walimu, it's very important for us to be synergized. And Brother Bailey always talks about that. So right now, Brother Bailey, I know you've heard quite a bit, but you're very clear. You're one of the world's leading race first journalists that I know. So chime in for us for a few before we go back around again.
Well, I first of all, I just want to say thank you, brothers, for what you have said about me, and I'm really feel honored to be a part of what you're trying to do, because this is absolutely, to me, one of the most critical things that we have to do in this world that we live in today. I always think that to Brother Malcolm, it was so important that when I asked him, I was the editor of the Organization of Afro-American Unity's newsletter, and I was really, if you can imagine, beginning to bug Brother Malcolm about writing something specifically for the newsletter. And on February the 20th, 1965, the day before he was assassinated, he gave me an article. And in that article, he explained, in that way he had, that's why I call him a master teacher, because he had a way of presenting things in such a way that you could understand it. Why it was so important for us to have a strong emotion, not only emotional, but practical relationship with Africa. And he said that he remembered that as a child growing up in Michigan, you would hear people say, you don't have a Chinaman's chance. And what that meant was that you had absolutely no possibility of doing whatever you were trying to do. And so he would say, you don't have a Chinaman's chance. And he said, since China became a force on the world scene, you don't hear that statement anymore. Nobody says that anymore, because China, because of becoming a force on the world scene, provides a kind of a protection and umbrella for people of Chinese descent, no matter where they are. And his strong belief was that Africa should provide that same kind of protection and coverage and connection for people of African descent, no matter where they were in the world. And I don't think you could explain it any better than that. And he gave me that article the day before, and I'm not going to say it was the last article he ever wrote, but I know he gave it to me on February the 20th, 1965, and I published it in my memoir. I put the article in my memoir because it shows so clearly that his whole thing about the African thing was not just, he was not just coming from some kind of emotional thing. He saw a very practical reason in that, and that's why and of course he made me aware of that, and I've been kind of had that position and that feeling ever since, that our faiths are just totally connected with each other, and we'd do much better both here and on the continent when we finally come to recognize that.
All right, I hear you. So let me let Clyde step in just so he can share, and if he has any specific questions or pointed. Clyde?
Yes, Brother Senghor, thank you so much. I just thoroughly enjoy just listening to my brothers talk about their views on how this movement should move forward. My question is with regard to pushback on TAFM. Where do you see most of the pushback coming from? And with the ground-up stance, working with students and grassroots organizations around the globe, do you feel that will be enough to overtake the pushback that you anticipate?
Well,
and Brother Joomaay, if maybe you can speak to that.
All right.
Fundamentally, yes. Like they said, people, they're united, can never be defeated. The reality is that the sovereignty, unification of African people, meaning political unification, this pertains to managing together their sovereignty, in whichever way they are organized, either in the form of states or diasporic community like in the U.S., that we manage our sovereignty together. That must only come, the authorization to do so must only come through the African people themselves at the grassroots level. Now, whatever opposition, may come, and there are many, including the leadership, most of the leadership of the continent today, economic and political leadership of the continent, and of course the colonizers and neo-colonizers, they all will certainly oppose this because this is their piggy bank. Africa is their piggy bank in a way. They will oppose it, but if the movement is built from the grassroots, if the masses take ownership of the movement, there is no way that they could be defeated. The Vietnamese people have shown it, that when a people is decided and united, no other mighty force can defeat them.
Yes.
And this will be more than 1 billion people trying to unite. And morally, I like to say this to people, you see, when you are morally right, it's difficult to oppose you openly. Unity for African people is a morally right cause. Just like, civil rights were a morally right cause. It's difficult to oppose it directly. And if you oppose it, you're looked at as some sort of immoral person, in a way. Anyone, even the leadership of the continent that is opposed to unity, doesn't have the courage to outright oppose it. They say, yes, we want unity, but that's the way that they oppose it, in a way. So we are on the morally right side of history. And this is what also gives us forces. And this is why the message can certainly be accepted, how we could make the grassroots masses come and take ownership of this campaign for the unification of the African state and people within less than a generation. So yes.
Yeah, let me add.
Yes, I appreciate that. I just want to throw one other item out, if I could, Malamu. That is, Marcus Garvey spoke of propaganda, and speaking to the fact that the colonizers and the neo-colonizers will be certainly trying to push against this movement. We look at, as an example, in Zimbabwe, where there's so much propaganda against them for basically doing what is certainly morally right, i.e., reclaiming the land that was stolen from them, 40 years ago. And so, how do we envision fighting that? I know that we've got to have forums like this and opportunities to get on media like this, and that is the HarambeeRadio.com. But how else do you feel that we can get the word out? Well, and then please go ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be much more than the radio show is important in getting information out, but the organization at the local level is going to be critical. This is a bottoms-up movement, not a tops-down movement. And you look at the charter of the African Union, it says we, the heads of states of Africa, as opposed to we, the people of Africa. So the push is going to come from the bottom up, and then eventually the top will fall. And sometimes that happens pretty fast. Nobody expected the Berlin Wall to go down as fast as they did. I thought South African, black majority in South Africa would be someplace in the 21st century and it would be bloody. When you get a critical mass, sometimes things move rather rapidly. So this is an idea whose time has come. It's overdue. It's a question of mobilizing the masses and bringing the idea and then the reality of a universal Pan-African federation into political existence, and the movement will be from the bottom up. I want to also, what Peter Bailey mentioned, Malcolm's example of China, and I use that too. I guess maybe I got that I grew up in Harlem. I'm from Harlem originally, so maybe the Garvey and Malcolm might have just been in my blood, just running around from the low-income city housing project at Lincoln, in Lincoln, and I had to ride my bicycle up to 125th Street, so I had to see Malcolm before I went to school. But we used to say, "Ching Chong Charlie sitting on the fence, try to make a dollar out of 15 cents." Nobody says anything like that anymore. The reemergence of Africa, and we talk about the reemergence of Africa as a world power because Africa was a world power in ancient Kemet. So when Africa reemerges as a world power, it will have a tremendous impact on the destiny and the well-being and even the way we stand up of all Africans throughout the world. And Absolutely. Suddenly, black would be what's hip and what's in, and in the whole, just as the definition, just as you don't hear people saying those rhymes about China or having a dime's chance in China anymore. That would become the new reality once you have a strong and powerful Africa in the world. And let me just say this: that this is an urgent cause. Right now, you have all sorts of incursions of China in Africa. You have all sorts of military things going on with the United States for AFCOM. It is critically necessary for us to unite, not sometime in 2063, as the African Union talks about, but now. And the African population is growing. By the middle of the century, there's going to be more Africans in Africa alone than there are Chinese in China and Indians in India. We could unite and be a political force for good in the world, or we could be divided and have a new partition with China and the United States and other people. We in the Pan-African Federalist movement choose the latter. And we intend to see this in our lifetime, much less than a generation.
Well, I'd like to take a stab at that too, because that's a really good point that you're making, brother. Marcus Garvey said, "Let Africa be our guiding star of destiny." I hear a lot of talk, and I've seen a lot of organizations and movements, but I think when you have a central calling of this nature at this particular time, based on what we're faced with, that you're absolutely correct of how quick it can happen. And Marcus Garvey said that when you, and not only Marcus Garvey, Brother Redmond Battle, a lot of ancestors that I learned from, they said that you can change things in 24 hours once people get on the same page. And I like the call because it is a practical, realistic call, and I'm sure Brother Bailey might want to speak to this. I think our people have been misguided I mean, we go in all kinds of ways, but we all have a central issue that we have in common, and that is Africa is the mother of the cradle of civilization, and we are its children. And we of its children are responsible, regardless of what obstacles are in our way, to take care of Mother Africa. And everybody's in Africa. Everybody understands the importance of those resources. We have to churn that in on the grassroots level all over the world. And you're right. The people have power that they have not even begun to exercise in moving forward. Malcolm said it. Steve Biko said it. Kwame Nkrumah said it. Bob Marley said it. Sankara said it, and we can go on down the line. Anna Julia Cooper said it, Nanny Ellen Burroughs, Carter G. Woodson, all of our ancestors have paved the way. So it's our responsibility as those of us that are aware of practical Pan-Africanism to get this call, Clyde, in the minds of our young brothers and sisters, because this is something they can rally around, and they don't have to leave their fraternity, they don't have to leave their organization, they don't have to leave their club, they don't have to leave their particular ideological politic, and they can all have one central focus. And I'll stop right there because I know time is short, and I want to go back around again and
I just wanted to mention four things. Number one, you said it's a central issue today that we face with. You know, the central issue that Africans, wherever they are, on the continent or here, is deficit of power to control their destiny.
Yes.
Whether they are on the continent, here or in the Caribbean, Africans have a deficit of power to control the major or to be at the driver's seat of main decisions affecting their future and the future of their children. That means they don't have sovereignty, really. That is the main issue that is faced Africans today. Doesn't matter where they are. So the Pan-African Federalist movement is focused on restoring that. The second thing, Brother Malimu mentioned the issue of this new scramble for Africa. Everyone is today fighting for their piece of Africa, and that it's not going to only affect the continent, it's also going to affect Africans worldwide. When you talk about Black Lives Matter, if Africans had a state, a powerful state on which the sun never set, a police officer will hesitate before they shoot an African running around on the street here.
Yes,
they will have more. The third thing, to be pragmatical, if Africa was united today, there will be no unemployment in the African youth in America, in Europe, or anything, because Africa needs to be built. We need manpower, woman power to come and build it. Engineers, any formation you have here, we will need you to come on. Then you have a good job on which you could, so we could absorb, United Africa could absorb all the man-woman power that is here, that is not being used or being discriminated purposely to keep African people down. And the fourth thing I wanted to say is that the Pan-African Federalist movement, I said in the beginning, is in the model of the UNIA, because there are two things that are important to us. Not only do we want people to be active politically, organizing, but we want to also create means to empower them individually in terms of economic power. This is why we have the plan of building the NICs, the local NIC collaboration, so that, let's say, for example, a local committee in New York could, let's say, for example, share capital, let's say $12,000 to a national committee in Ghana as an investment, so that the youth there and then the people could be organized, could move together, and could raise funds at the same time. And Brother Clyde, it comes back to you. This is how we want to get people. It's just because we don't want, like they say in African culture, an empty ball cannot deceive a goat. We have to show to the people that we do, and this is what Garvey did. we have to show the people that we are also concerned with their well-being as we move into the United Africa.
Brother, can I make a couple of suggestions? Can I make a couple of suggestions?
Yes.
Yes. Number one, I think that in order to help our people both on the continent and in America to really understand what we're dealing with, especially when we're dealing with what is called the United States, I'm going to begin in my writings to refer to this as the continent of North America, aka USA. This is the continent of North America, and only the continent of Africa can deal effectively with the continent of North America. And I think we have to really start putting into our people's minds that when you deal with the United States, you're not dealing with a country. This is the continent of North America. When you deal with China, when you're dealing with China, you're dealing with a subcontinent. So no individual African country can effectively negotiate anything with a continent. And so I think we should start really making people understand that we're dealing with the subcontinent of China on one aspect, and when you're dealing with the United States, you're dealing with the continent of North America. And I'm going to start using that in my writings. I'm going to say the continent of North America, and then maybe put in parentheses, a.k.a. USA.
Yes,
that's number one. And number two, I think we should really don't make the mistakes that we made so often in the 70s. You got to first organize the true believers. You cannot organize if you got to spend 5 hours persuading people as to why this needs to be done. You find the people, I don't care how few there are, who when you say about this, they say, how can we best go about doing it? If the people who say, why do we have to do it, you deal with them later. You deal with the ones who ask the question, how can we best go about it? You organize the true belief. We made that mistake in the 70s so many times that it hurts me to even think about it. How often we spend time trying to persuade people. You cannot organize any kind of serious movement when you have to spend hours persuading people. You have to get the people organized who are the true, what I call the true believers. You don't write the people off. But once you get the true believers organized, then you will reach out to the people who you have to persuade. Third point, and I'll be stopped. We need a song. We need a song. There's a reason that people have anthems. We need a song that's written specifically for this kind of movement and that reflects what it's all about. It is very, very, very important to have a song that every single person in both the continent, the Caribbean, or United States who accept this position, when they get together, they sing this song.
So Brother Bailey, y'all, I know we got about 5 more minutes, but that's great. The question that I have for Brother Joomaay, and he may be able to answer it right away. If not, that's something we need, because it's right there what you just said. I noticed that Baba Maul and Yusuf Ndua were ambassadors on the website.
Absolutely. What Brother Peter said is absolutely important, and indeed, a song for the Pan-African Federalist Movement is on the working.
Good. That's what
we have what we call cultural ambassadors and sports ambassadors. We would like, for example, someone like LeBron James, for example, to be an ambassador of this movement, because the UN is using these people to further causes that definitely don't really change fundamentally the condition of Africans. And we have many artists, let's say Mutabaruka, for example, Fizla Kalanji, for example, Queen Ifrika, for example. All of these have signed up to be ambassadors of this movement. Tiken Jaffa Ali, Ismaila Toure, DJ Awadi, Black Rasa, the daughter of Lucky Dube, for example. All of these have signed up to be Lucky Dube. They have all signed up to be cultural ambassadors, and they will indeed come with a song for this one. And the song is on the working. I want to also tell you that the God of Kwame Nkrumah is a strong member of the Pan-African Federalist Movement.
The sister, you mean the daughter, Samara, right?
Samia.
Okay. Let me just one. While we're working on the song, Bob Marley, Africa Must Unite, I would throw that out. And two, in terms of dealing with North America as a continent, you notice that it's the regional initiating committee for North America, and I agree 100% with Peter Bailey's approach. Just in terms of population, there's more Africans in the United States than there are Canadians in Canada.
Oh, okay, I know we could go on and on and on, but we're getting close to that closing point. We got a couple more minutes. I love the fact that we're talking about the creative aspect at this point, because our people are focused on that creativity. But I really want to get a closing statement from Brother Joomaay, and then let Brother Clyde take us away, because we're going to do a lot more of this, y'all. Y'all are family. I'm in like Flint. I told you, I'm in. I mean, when I say I'm in, I'm going to do everything I can, because I've seen a lot of things that Brother Bailey was just talking about in action, and I am a youth advocate. I see what's going on in the continent. So I'm going to say thank you all. I'm going to turn it over to Joomaay to give me a closing statement, and then let Brother Clyde take it. And we're going to have to do another show. There's no question about it. And Brother Joomaay, this is your home. Harambe is pulling together. That's the purpose that we formed Harambe for 14 years ago. So it's not just the Black Star Line 9 times. We got a whole lineup of shows. So just be clear, this is your home.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say one thing to conclude. We need to stop protesting our situation. We need to focus on empowering ourselves by uniting our people under one government, under one mighty empire that the sun never set. We need, and that's the only way we could regain the position we had under Narmer, the founder of ancient Egypt.
Yep.
Wow. So I want to thank my brother Bailey. I want to thank you, Brother Joomaay, for taking time out. I want to thank you, Brother Wadamu, and definitely Clyde. I want to thank Delani Amon at the controls and turn it over to Clyde. We're going to have to do this again, my brothers. But I'm sure the word is going to get out. You all will get these files. Let's send them everywhere, because we got to do some more reasoning. Because like Brother Bailey said, we're looking for those people who know what needs to be done and to show what needs to be done, so people can gravitate to it and get involved. Brother Clyde.
Just thank Brother Senghor for opening up this line and for being such a friend and for all he's doing. And again, it's a pleasure to be in the esteemed company of Brother Bailey.
Okay, Brother Clyde.
Yes. We could raise our right fist. One God.
Right.
One God.
One aim.
One aim.
One aim.
One destiny.
One destiny. Thank you all. Raise first. Yeah, we got to move on for the next show. Delani, thank you very much. My brothers will be in touch. Brother Bailey, I'll talk to you tomorrow, because we got some work we're doing here.